Hi guys, what's going on and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So today we are going to be diving into the patch notes for the upcoming closed beta test. Although to be honest, by the time I actually record this, I suspect the servers will be live, so you'll actually be able to test out some of these changes for yourself. But it's still kind of worth watching because hopefully you'll get better informed about the main things that have changed since the last Spring Mayhem test. So first off, matchmaking. Something I felt that really needed some work after some of the previous tests where I felt it was kind of unbalanced. And they've made some quite good changes, although whilst they haven't gone quite as far I would have liked them to, they have introduced a level 10 to 20 matchmaking band, which I think is a good thing, stops some of the lower level players getting flung into higher tier matches. But I would like to see that sort of rolled out, that plus 10 bracket rolled out across all the ranges so that, you know, you've still not got level 30s fighting level 60s, etc. I think would make more sense, but hopefully that's something we can expect in the future. Furthermore, they have introduced a random map rotation for standard battles. So rather than everyone individually queuing up for the map they want to play, you'll now just queue up for, say, a siege battle, and the matchmaking, once it groups all the players together, will decide the map on a random rotation. Much better improvement. That's how the system should have worked from the start. Definitely a change worth making. And they've also finally removed the daily and weekly limits for the Iron Man and Expedition modes. They should never have really been on in the first place. I'm not quite sure why they did that. So well in favour of those getting removed. So you'll also notice there have been some small changes to your character's attributes, with leadership actually being removed as something you can put points into. So instead it's now going to start at a base level of 100 and then increase by 100 every 10 levels. So you'll start at level 1 with 100 leadership, then at level 10 you'll get 200 leadership, level 20 you'll be 300 leadership, all the way up to level 60 where it will cap out. We are also going to be getting the introduction of language-specific chat channels for the main supported languages, which are English, French, German, Spanish and Russian. This certainly seems like a good change. I think there was definitely some communication difficulties in some of the previous tests where there's multiple languages all trying to communicate in one channel, so it seems a good change to make that language-specific kind of a logical move. I guess the only thing here worth noting is that it seems like the chat channel you get put into, or you're allowed to go into, is going to be determined by the language your client is set to. I.e., if you're loading in with the Russian client, you can't join the English chat channel, etc. You know, so it's kind of limiting you. So if you're just in a funky situation where you're a Russian living in the UK, I guess you might need to consider that with which client you're running through. So after that, onto something that's probably going to be a little bit more controversial. And these are sort of chests and skeleton keys. So these are a kind of loot sort of / reward chest that will be opened with skeleton keys and are going to earn the player silver, crafting supplies and equipment. A maximum of 20 can be opened per week, and the keys are going to be able to be earned via the weekly missions. You're going to be able to get there's weekly missions there like the Marshal's chests. You can basically unlock 7 of them through the weekly missions. Then you're going to get the chests through a combination of both randomly through standard battles like I'm playing in at the moment, or much more likely through some of the expeditions and things like the bandit camps, where you're actually going out into the open world and attacking these camps. They're going to be giving you a pretty high probability of earning these chests, but you're also going to need a key to unlock them. The bit that I think is going to be more controversial is the fact there's a little line at the bottom of the patch notes that says more keys can be obtained by those with a premium account. It seems to be that there's going to be extra weekly missions available to those with a premium account where they're going to be able to unlock these. So I think that's going to kind of throw a little bit of controversy, but I think you've got to remember these are actually replacing rebel suppression orders which have been removed in this patch. So whereas before you needed a rebel suppression order to attack some of the larger camps, you no longer need that. So this is kind of what's replacing that. So it's just a way of getting a little bit of extra loot. I don't think it's going to make any shocking great differences to the way the game plays out, so I don't think it's worth getting too pent up about. We're also going to see some changes in the way eras are working. Quite small changes. They're basically just shifting it so it's a little bit easier to get into some of the higher tier units, where things like the rustic, chivalric and silver eras are all having the total number of units required to unlock them reduced by 1. So to unlock like the silver era, you're not going to need quite so many units as you did before. But it's also worth pointing out that the requirements for the heroic and golden era are staying the same. So if you want to get really, really high tier, then it's still going to be a pretty big grind, but hopefully a little bit less for getting to some of those sort of decent quality mid-tier units. So after that, we move on to a lot of the smaller stuff. Some of the changes have been going on to the tutorial, with things like artillery deployment tutorial being added, the adjustments of some of the enemies in tutorials, corresponding tooltips, finishing certain tutorials before fighting in PvP, etc. Just kind of a bit of an overhaul and an update of the tutorial system. We also see some changes to the houses and alliances, with the number of alliances that can be allied has been decreased from 5 to 3, and the number of kingdoms that can be deemed hostile has been increased from 10 to 15, as well as some adjustments to the search function and description of house reputation. Again, all pretty small things, but some of which, are going to make to some quality of life changes. And finally, global map. They seem to have added in these things called collectible random objects. Something I hadn't really expected, but these are objects that are specific to each player. So when you see or collect the object, it doesn't affect other players, so you only have your own sort of specific one to you. And these are going to provide rewards of silver, crafting resources, consumables. This kind of sounds similar to the chest and skeleton keys, but there's something that's, everyone can find out in the wild. Once you use it, it takes 1 to 7 days for a new one to appear. They're just like random little perks and bonuses you can find, but they're only going to be found in the open world. I think it's basically supposed to be a sort of encouragement to get you to go out and explore a little bit more. There's also been small things. Silver reward has been increased for owning cities and forts. It's just going to make it all the more important in terms of the territory wars and stuff. As I mentioned earlier, rebel suppression orders are no longer required to raid rebel camps, but of course that's kind of been replaced by those chests. Lots of a couple of small fixes and a little bit of balances around unit damage and stuff. Nothing specific. I think that was too interesting there, so if you want to go and check that out in more detail, I'd recommend you go over and read the patch notes. So that concludes all I've got to talk about today. Kind of an interesting set of patch notes. I'm pretty excited to get out and to test into the main server now, kind of see what's changed and get stuck into a bit of action. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, let me know what you think about these patch notes in the comments down below. Subscribe to the channel for lots more Conqueror's Blade content, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.